Welcome to the Andy Staples Show. I'm back with Ari Wasserman, back from SEC meetings, and we got a little Big Ten news to discuss because
That's
Ohio.
exactly how you drew it up, right? Driving to Destin, spending 3 days in SEC paradise, and then coming right back to talk about the sweet old Big Ten.
Well, but it's the most SEC team in the Big Ten. It's Ohio State, so I'm good with that. And also, I have questions later about stuff that happened during the SEC meetings, and I want to see from someone who was not inside that SEC bubble if what I'm thinking makes sense or I'm off. But
Okay.
let's start with Ohio State because your friend Doug Maurice had a great story about Ryan Day speaking to a bunch of Columbus business leaders on Thursday morning and basically saying, hey, guys, Ohio State will need about $13 million to essentially establish an NIL payroll. And you can read into this many ways. Ryan Day was not doing this with an alarming tone. It didn't sound like he was freaking out or anything. He's just sort of matter-of-factly stating this is what it's going to take. It sounds to me like Ohio State's going, we're open for business, baby.
Yeah. It's so funny because the main discussion point as it pertains to NIL has always been focused on, and maybe it's just because I'm in the recruiting world, you tell me if you think I'm wrong, has always been about focusing on how teams are going to accumulate high school talent and transfers with NIL. And very little of the discourse has been about maintaining a roster or what it's going to take to be competitive in that regard. So the fact that this discussion was pertaining to the players that are already on the team, I thought was a nice little twist because somehow, some way, the current players on a lot of these really good teams who are actually the players who have proven something,
yeah,
and have actually
ones
done
who are
something,
actually worth money,
the ones who have actually worth money through performance, have kind of been left off to the wayside a little bit. So it's just a nice reminder that those guys are worth a lot of money and they're getting paid. And even if it's not a lot of fanfare, like the one thing that I find interesting is that CJ Stroud is one of the 5 probably most marketable players in the sport.
Oh, yeah.
We haven't heard a single thing about what he's been making.
Marketable. Let's, because I'm getting tired of everybody saying, well, that's not what NIL was designed for. Listen, unless you're a complete imbecile, you knew that money would go toward these people for their value as football players, because what are they doing? They're running a football business trying to win football games. So, of course, it will be about their value as football players. And guess what CJ Stroud is? One of the 5 most valuable players in college football. Not
but also marketability is directly linked to that. But it's the same thing.
He's one of the best QBs. That's what matters.
But his marketability is enhanced by him being very good. So I think they're kind of intertwined a little bit. But of course, position and stature of the program and productivity and all the things you just said are true. But have you heard a single thing about what he has made? Any rumors, any posts, any Twitter?
No.
So Ohio State's kind of just been off to the side on this a little bit. And, Ryan Day said something that I thought was really interesting from Ohio State's perspective. And I think that was the most interesting thing about the story that Doug wrote. Ryan Day said to picture NIL or the NIL arms race as a speed limit. And, the speed limit is a highway 65. Mm-hmm. If you drive too slow or at 65 directly on the limit, you will get passed by others. Correct. But if you go too fast, you'll get pulled over. So it's about trying to find a happy medium of where to exist in that threshold of definitely not at the back of the pack, but definitely not at the front of the pack, because I don't
think anybody's getting pulled over.
Yeah, I don't either. And that's the next thing I was going to say is there this panic that Tennessee is going to get pulled over, or a school that, Texas A&M, who's also been in the news, if you've heard about all this, is going to get pulled over. And I don't really know what the ground. It's like they might get pulled over, but what's the cop going to write them a ticket for?
Exactly.
It's a hard thing to envision. But I thought that was an interesting concept because, Alabama doesn't have to do that. Ohio State doesn't have to do that. And Georgia, I don't know how they're doing it, but it doesn't seem like they're really out in the forefront of the discussion anyway. And there's a lot of shadows.
Enough to know that they don't need to be discussing anything. They just need to be getting it done.
That's right. So I think that the loudest programs are the ones that are more desperate to win and to draw attention to themselves. And I think that that's on purpose. Like you have like none of the loudest NIL rumor mills or discussion points are about the teams that make the playoff every year. It's about the teams who haven't made the playoff who want to.
Well, but you have Nick Saban complaining loudly about it and
He
saying,
complained loudly about it, yes, but Alabama just kind of went about their business, and there were a few comments here and there about how much Bryce Young made, but Alabama wasn't like in the A&M discussion point.
But Nick Saban saying what he said that got all the attention and that got Jimbo Fisher so mad, saying what he said, take away the direct accusations of Texas A&M and Jackson State, is exactly what Ryan Day said, just in packaged differently. Ryan Day said it in a less, this is the end of the world way than Nick Saban did, but he said the same thing. You guys who donate the money to us, this is how much you need to raise. This is how much we're going to need. Simple as that. And that's all Nick Saban was saying to those people.
And that's current roster. That doesn't take into account future players.
Yeah. Okay. So here's the deal, though. $13 million sounds like a lot of money until you know what $13 million will buy you in the NFL. Do you know what $13 million will buy you in the NFL, Ari?
A third string left guard.
No, it's not.
No,
that.
It's a little better than that. Yeah.
One franchise tag safety. So like Jesse Bates, the safety for the Bengals, is franchise tag this year. He will make $12.9 million. So one good safety is what that buy in the NFL. So it tells you it's not like CJ Stroud is going to be worth a lot.
What does that buy you in the NBA?
Football. Oh, good Lord. Like an eighth man, maybe on a mid-level exception.
So the thing that I think is more fascinating than the total number is how it's broken down. Like
Yes.
if you had to guess like how it was broken down, and I think Doug wrote that don't think $150,000 for every player, think about $500,000 for the most important ones. But like I wonder how much like CJ Stroud has quietly gone about his business, but like he's like a model for Express now, which is located in Columbus. Mm-hmm. He's gotten plenty of deals. I think he had like a Red Lobster one or something, and has tweeted a lot about different businesses.
Red Lobster could just pay me in Cheddar Bay biscuits. They wouldn't even have to give me money.
You'll laugh about this, but I work out in this group workout. If you've been getting your updates on your watch,
I have been on my watch. Yes,
and somebody in there said they didn't like Cheddar Bay biscuits, and like I made like we got into like an actual physical argument about it.
Did you punch them?
That's just like I understand that everybody in here is trying to be healthy. We're trying to lose weight, and this guy was like very fit, and like he was like, trying to make a point of like I don't like eat that trash. It's like there's two different things about it. Like one is I don't eat that stuff because I don't want to put bad things in my body, and that is fine. Anybody can say that, but saying that you don't like them is offensive.
Exactly. Saying
people mix up
healthy choices is fine. Everybody likes Cheddar Bay biscuits. Let's be real here.
And my pet peeve is when people mix up. I don't like eating that stuff because it's not good for you, and I don't like it.
Right. There is a difference. But back to the discussion at hand, and I hope
try to pull you into a food conversation.
I hope CJ Stroud is getting some Cheddar Bay biscuits with the money he's getting from Red Lobster. But Ryan Day basically said $2 million for a good quarterback. And look, that is a sensible number if it's a CJ Stroud level quarterback. CJ Stroud is one of the best 2 or 3 quarterbacks in college football. The other one
reasonable.
Won the Heisman last year.
Yeah. And the thing that I would love to know, and it's the same thing that always comes back to on these discussions, Andy, is like Nick Saban, who threw out these accusations, right, that were completely baseless, also said in another similar setting, I don't know if it was a news conference or if he was talking to boosters, that Bryce Young's going to make $1 million.
He's talking to Texas high school football coaches. So that was a recruiting pitch.
Okay, yeah. So I'd like to know how much Bryce Young actually made. Like, I don't know if we're ever going to get to the point of like how much are people actually making and how much is just foo-foo that people throw out to crowds that are going to be either impacting the college decisions of their players or people who are going to be writing the checks to impact those players. But like, how much are people actually making so that we can have a keen understanding of what players are actually worth?
Not nearly as much as is being said, and I'll tell you why. The agent for the player has a reason to lie.
Right.
And exaggerate because they want more money for the client and then for themselves via the commission. And then the coach has a reason to lie
to get more money.
Point for recruiting purposes. Now, you don't want to completely overinflate it, and that's why Jimbo Fisher pushed back so hard against $30 million, because $30 million, which wasn't true, is a problem for Jimbo Fisher, because if anybody believes that, and not the public, but if someone on his team were to believe that, like a good player on his team were to believe that, that person's going, where's mine? And that's something he does have to deal with.
But I wonder if we're going to get to a point where we know specifically, like, back in the day,
Right.
by back in the day, I mean like 2 years ago, public record would show you what a recruiting budget was for a school. And those were kind of jumbled because some people put certain expenses under recruiting umbrellas that others
State
didn't.
had the number one recruiting budget a few years ago. So
but you can get if you look at the actual numbers, you can get a very good, like Georgia spent by far the most. Alabama and Ohio State were in the top 10. Like you could tell who was actually spending money and which one was like putting, non-recruiting expenses under the recruiting budget. I wonder if we're going to get to a point where we know exactly how much everybody is getting paid. And like, I don't know if we ever will.
Will there be a SPO track for college football?
Yeah, I want to know if there's going to be a Forbes story in 2027 that says here's how much NIL money went out to every single one of these contracts or any one of those classes.
Until the schools are paying directly, no,
you can't have it. Yeah, it's all personal deals.
Because it's coming from no, it's never going to be like the NFL ones aren't public. They get leaked by both sides. The agents leak the pie in the sky number, that if this contract gets completely fulfilled number.
Yeah.
Like my client signed a 5-year, $150 million deal. What he really means is my client signed a 3-year deal with $50 million guaranteed, 2 voidable years on the back end. And if he hits these unhittable incentive clauses, he'll then make $150 million.
Because his best interest is to try, like you said, to juice up the contract numbers as much as possible and to set the market. And then the NFL teams kind of combat that with the real contracts because they don't want it to be overinflated and to create a false expectation that the other players are going to want to match that. But like it is just like we're a year into this and probably 6 months into actually having real life discussions about how it's impacting college programs and whole recruiting classes. And the thing that I cannot stand the most is that we are talking in generalities about money that we don't know about. And that's like, it's hard.
And everyone believes at least it feels like everyone believes every number that gets thrown out on the internet. Like, remember when Jordan Addison, I don't even think Jordan Addison had entered the portal yet. And then somebody who covers Pittsburgh, who's never broken any news, throws out that he's getting $3 million from USC. And at that point, he hadn't even decided where he was going yet.
Yeah.
Like
he was sliced bagels.
That's right. Sliced bread, sliced bagels. What happens if sliced Cheddar Bay biscuits shows up?
It's called a reliable source if I've ever heard of one.
That's exactly right. Yeah, I mean
slice orange cola could be one.
Let me ask you another question on this though, Ari, because while Ryan Day again was not making an alarmist tone here, he was basically just laying it out there saying here's what is needed and this is going to be the way of doing business from now on. He also basically said this is what you need to keep a roster of that level together. So question one, if you can't and you're Ohio State or Alabama or whoever, where are they going to go? And question two, if they go places that aren't Ohio State or Alabama level national title contenders, isn't that what we want to happen? Wouldn't that create a more even playing field?
The Jordan Addison move in reverse.
Correct.
Yeah. Because like I think that the Jordan Addison move, though, will firmly help me in our bet.
Correct.
Is not what I want to see in the sport.
No.
As a casual observer.
Right. But would a player signing with Tennessee or Texas or Nebraska or Michigan State or Penn State, who normally would have signed with Ohio State, Alabama, or Georgia, would players doing that be what you would want to see?
Sure.
Because it makes Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia less likely to win the national title.
You know what I'd love to see more than all that?
It makes the other ones more likely to compete for it.
I'd love to see a person win the Biletnikoff at Clemson and then transfer to Pitt.
That would be something. I don't think that's going to happen.
I don't know that it ever can because, but it's just like, I wonder, like, if you made a list of the 7 or 10 most deep-pocketed, passionate fan bases that have middle-tier programs, like, I don't know if those two things even jive.
TCU
But, like,
and Baylor
which
would
teams
probably
could
be,
just, like, pay.
yeah. But I think they would have to spot recruit. It would have to be like one person that they go all in on, and that it comes with its own.
If you were
issues,
Caleb Williams, how much money would it take for you to play at Baylor?
More than it would at USC, more than it would have at Oklahoma.
I know, but do you think that there could be a package to get him there?
Yes.
That would be fun to
maybe
see.
Maybe not specifically him, because he seemed to have a plan. And
yeah,
and
just
Lincoln
somebody
Riley
in his
to be part of
position.
it.
I don't know him.
But
so
yes,
like,
no,
yeah,
I do.
Yeah.
I do think and here's the thing, you would have to acknowledge, as that kind of program, we're going pretty much all in on maybe this guy and maybe 2 other guys, and it won't be spread out. Whereas I think at Alabama or at Georgia, it's going to be spread pretty evenly at the top.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, of all the positions in college football that you could pitch a big deal to, it's the most important position, like quarterback.
Of course.
It's like Pitt sounds like a terrible place to have to end up if you're at a place like Alabama, Ohio State, or USC or Clemson or one of those. But it's like Pitt can look you in the eye right now and say, we had a quarterback taken in the first round this year.
Yeah.
Right,
exactly.
It's not like, and if you go look at quarterbacks in the NFL, it's the most random collection of colleges you could ever imagine.
Yes.
Like the best quarterback on the face of the earth went to Texas Tech. Aaron Rodgers went to Cal. I mean, like Baker Mayfield.
And Aaron Rodgers went nowhere out of high school. Like, he had to go to JUCO to get recruited more.
Trey Lance went to North Dakota State.
Josh Allen went to Wyoming.
And Baker Mayfield was a really bad example. But like
Mayfield was a walk-on.
Yeah, he's a Texas Tech walk-on. But if you go down the list of starting quarterbacks, it's not like it's Clemson, Ohio State. Well, I mean, there's a few of them, but like, and Alabama has a few. But other than that, like, the entire league is random places.
You're exactly right. And a lot of it's opportunity, playing time, everything else. Josh Allen. So the reason Josh Allen went to Wyoming is there was another player. I'm blanking on the name, but I think Josh Allen was going to go to Eastern Michigan. And then another player flipped away from Wyoming. It was a quarterback who was from Oregon, but played in the Midwest or on the East Coast. I will find the name. But that's how that happened. But Josh Allen also not recruited out of high school, like had to go to JUCO to get himself recruited.
I'm looking at the list of some of the starting quarterbacks in the NFL right now. And I don't know if this list is up to date, but here are some of the colleges I'm reading. Old Dominion, Texas A&M, and I'm sure you could probably know who I'm talking about every time I go down the list here.
Yeah, Ryan Tannehill's Texas A&M.
Yep. Taylor Heineke is Old Dominion.
Yep.
Russell Wilson, Wisconsin. Jimmy Garoppolo.
Russell Wilson's NC State.
NC State to Wisconsin.
Yep.
Jimmy Garoppolo, Eastern Illinois. Ben Roethlisberger, Miami of Ohio. Gardner Minshew, Washington State. Zach Wilson, BYU. Taysom Hill went to BYU. Kirk Cousins, Michigan State. Justin Herbert, Oregon. Derek Carr, Fresno State. Mahomes, Texas Tech. Carson Wentz, North Dakota State. Like, North Dakota State has more starting quarterbacks in the NFL next year than Ohio State does.
And right, it is very random. So
2 Cals too. Missouri, we got a Mississippi State. I mean, that's Arkansas. They're all over the place.
Yeah, it is going to be a very strange situation, because some schools are going to spend a lot of money on these quarterback recruits and get nothing out of it. And then other schools are going to spend nothing and get a future NFL player. Now, the question will be, when that person, blows up, like Trey Lance, that's an interesting situation. The pandemic obviously had a huge effect on Trey Lance because they didn't get to play that season. So if Trey Lance comes along in this era, has that one season he has at North Dakota State, does every Power 5 school that needs a starting quarterback throw every dollar they can at Trey Lance to get him to play that last year?
It's just funny that it's all the rule changes are happening at the same time. because I don't know if this were to happen during a time where you have to sit out a year. But now that you can do both, transfer freely and play immediately and get paid, it's like a whole new list.
Trey Lance could have transferred
He could have
freely.
transferred anyway, right? Because it was a different
because
level.
it was So it's I mean, that's the thing. That's what's going to be curious. And you're right. The right school. And so here, let's think about, and it doesn't necessarily, because there are schools with lots of money that have not had that kind of success.
This is the number one mailbag question that I get that I have not answered yet because I don't know the answer.
Go for it.
So you can help me with this.
Yeah.
When we're talking about it, I'm saying, they say which schools that are not on the NIL front right now in the news or whatever have deep pockets behind the scenes that could potentially create something to get players to either transfer there or sign there because they're rich.
Right.
And that's, I think, the road you were going down. So
Nebraska, Texas, Arkansas, Michigan State's got some money. Tennessee. Who else fits this bill?
Is there anything in the Pac-12?
No. I mean, Oregon, but they recruit well too. They recruit well out of high school. USC, I guess. I mean,
how do you determine this based on like your knowledge of booster money?
I mean, I know who has a lot of good donors and who has an easier time raising money than others. And like Arkansas and Tennessee, they just put the call out and the money comes flowing in. I think Nebraska could be like that too.
Isn't Kentucky a sneaky one?
Kentucky's got money. Yeah.
Because of that building they built for the football team before all this stuff happened. Like Ole Miss has money, right?
No, Ole Miss does not have a lot of money.
They don't?
No, they can't snap their fingers. So you're telling me that the
Tui thing was a lie? Or that was just one rich family?
Right. They have not snapped their fingers and had a bunch of donors just, pouring money. Like Memphis probably has a bigger single donor in Fred Smith. Although I don't know, does Fred Smith give to Ole Miss as well? Because that's geographically he's close. But
I'm just waiting for the days where one billionaire just lights the world on fire and throws his money around like it's nothing.
Everybody thinks that's going to be Phil Knight, and I just don't think it's going to happen.
I know, but like, who are the other answers to that? Like, it was T-Boone Pickens.
You're looking at this like English Premier League soccer. Like, who's going to get bought by a Saudi prince or by an oil, like an oil Emirati, and that person's just going to buy.
I mean, it conceivably could happen. There would be no need for a fundraiser because there's a certain level of wealth. Like if Jeff Bezos has a favorite college football team. Right. Doesn't the founder of Starbucks a huge Washington booster? I
don't know.
Like something like that, where like a CEO of one of the largest companies in the world that's got a net worth of billions of dollars that could hand out $1 million to every single scholarship player on the roster every year and not even blink at it. Then like completely just like, what, you guys can, Ohio State, you want to raise $30 million to keep your roster together? That's fine. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to drop $25 million on
what you're describing is what the Saudi government is trying to do to the golfers. Do with the golfers. Like offer so much upfront money and guaranteed money that they cannot say no. And that's why Dustin Johnson is potentially going to risk getting sanctioned by the PGA Tour, because why not? And they're using this as leverage, and the PGA Tour has had to go find some money essentially to guarantee to these people, because they realize, oh crap, these people have unlimited wealth. Like the Saudi government has a bottomless pit of, I heard Daniel Rappaport, I believe from Golf, I think it was Golf Week, called it a bottomless pit of money. And I think that's probably accurate. And they don't care if they lose it or not. It's almost like college boosters, basically. They don't care about making a profit on this thing they're doing, this tour that they're creating. They care about softening the image of Saudi Arabia in the world, in the world's eyes. So they'll just throw money at it till they get what they want. What you're saying is, would somebody do that in college football? I don't know. I don't know that, because the people who have that kind of money. Well, here's an example. That at a school where they deeply care about football, Tim Cook is an Auburn grad. He's the CEO of Apple.
There you go. Yeah.
But he's given money to Auburn. But I don't see Tim Cook saying I'm going to pay every Auburn football player $1 million. Like
Jeff
can't
Bezos went to Princeton. I don't know if you knew that off the top of your head. I'm trying to
I
think
did
of
not know that.
I'm trying to figure out like who are the richest people on the face of the earth and where do they
Jeff
go.
Bezos is from Miami. I wonder if he grew up a Canes fan.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Maybe people that are so driven to become CEOs of companies.
Or maybe people who got rich that, and are that successful don't waste money like that.
I mean, Elon Musk just bought Twitter because of whatever his.
He didn't though.
No, I know, but like, I mean, he was. I mean,
the
Tesla stock plummeted by 10% the week after it happened because they were worried that he wasn't going to pay attention to Tesla as much. I mean, that was a legitimate, thought process. So,
by the way, before I forget, Eric Dungy was the player who flipped away from Wyoming.
Very fun player to watch, by the way.
That allowed Josh Allen to get the scholarship to Wyoming. Otherwise, Josh Allen was going to be at Eastern Michigan. So
yeah, because you could look. I just looked at 50. I just Googled richest boosters in
college football.
College football. Yeah, sorry, I was reading it. Brian Shot.
The sport we cover. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a guy named Casey Wasserman at UCLA.
Yeah, UCLA. Yeah. His name's on the building.
Yes, he's my uncle.
He's not your uncle.
He can be if he's one of the
most. You'd be in a very different business. You'd be an agent. You'd be representing people.
No, I would be the owner of the Athletic then. I'm trying to see if there's anybody that has
or you'd be a media consultant because they do. Wasserman Group does media consulting too.
Jimmy Haslam is one of the richest people in the world, and he's a Tennessee person. That one should come to my head.
I'm aware of that.
Jerry Jones is an Arkansas person.
Yep. Why do you think I said Tennessee and Arkansas, Ari?
So I don't know this stuff off the top of my head. Like I need to the Papa John's guys from Louisville. Obviously, I don't know if he can donate anything
anymore. They took his name off the stadium.
Yeah,
he got
I know.
A little upset about
that. A little trouble. Yeah, I mean, rightfully so. Like Mark Cuban went to Indiana
and has not expressed any interest. He's actually been asked about it. I've heard him interviewed about it, and he's been asked, "Would you do that?" And he's like, "Hell no." Also,
Mark Cuban is such a smart businessman that he would probably laugh at the idea of it.
Well, he was asked specifically about donating to Indiana basketball or trying to set up NIL deals for Indiana basketball players. But the reason he couldn't do that is it would be against NBA tampering rules because those are draft eligible players.
Yeah.
And you can't compensate draft eligible players.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. There's a lot of, names on here that I don't have the time while we're on the podcast to read everyone's bio, but a lot of very wealthy people that, in theory could, like, I think T Boone at Oklahoma State is the perfect example of that. Some guy like what if Warren Buffett were just a huge Cornhuskers fan
and just wanted to, that is the last person. That is the last person who would waste his money that way. Like Warren Buffett is the person who would talk you out of doing that.
Yes. Maybe the wrong business, but Warren Buffett spent his entire life accumulating wealth. The man's 90 years old.
And he's like, let's go.
Is he going to do? Leave his money to a public library? I mean, let's ride.
What if former Coastal Carolina coach and former Ameritrade CEO Joe Mowgli decided we're just going to make Coastal a complete powerhouse?
Yeah.
Like, why not? Now, I think he still works for the school, so he couldn't do that. He's kind of the special advisor to Jamie Chadwell, but he could quit that job.
Yeah. What about Les Wexner at Ohio State?
Well, I was already assuming that was happening.
Yeah, well, he's worth $6 billion.
Isn't Express a limited brand?
Yes.
So isn't he doing that?
To a certain extent, yes. But I'm talking about like Santa Claus coming down the chimney with a suit full of money and just throwing it out like Halloween.
I just don't think these people would do it. The Phil Knight thing everybody always brings up. And look, the Oregon Collective has been very active, and Oregon is very much playing ball. But Nike itself, and remember, Phil Knight does not work for Nike anymore. I don't know. I can't remember what role he serves. I think if he's in any role now, it's an emeritus type role. So he's not really representing the company. Nike can't do that, because if Nike did that, then all the Nike schools that aren't getting that benefit would suddenly become Adidas schools. And so that would be bad for Nike's business. Now, if it's a business that doesn't rely on a relationship with with college football programs, that's a little bit different story. But here's the thing. I'll bring a guy that is a very well-known, deep-pocketed booster who is known for being very active in the administration of the football program. Jimmy Rain, the yellow fella, Yellowwood, Auburn. Look at Auburn's recruiting class. They ain't doing it right now.
There's got to be like a telephone number that we can call.
Like a hotline?
Like, I mean, if you think about how obsessed boosters are with providing financial assistance to programs in order for them to win, why don't any of the richest people in the world want to be the only reason they won a national championship? Talk about an ego boost.
Because there's the people you're talking about are so rich, they don't need that ego boost. They don't.
I met a lot of rich people that need ego boosts.
Like Elon Musk, you brought up earlier, trying to buy Twitter. That is a different kind of ego boost than rigging a college football national championship. Like getting mad about a social media platform administrating its business the way it does, and then saying, I'll just buy you, is a much bigger flex. Like 10 orders of magnitude bigger flex than buying a college football national championship for your alma mater.
You want to hear a funny story about me, like learning a new thing about me?
I love learning new things about you.
So when I was 27 years old, like seven years ago, okay, I went on a Mediterranean cruise with my family. And this was a wonderful vacation that I will remember for the rest of my life.
We're talking Greek Isles. We're talking Capri.
Yes. It was Italy, Greek Islands, Amalfi Coast. It was like a 2.5-week cruise. I mean, we did it all. Istanbul was on there. Like, I don't even know how, like, geographically how that worked out, but it did. Santorini, all that stuff. And we were on a little catamaran boat, like on one of the excursions, having some beers and just hanging out. And then all of a sudden this big ass boat, like the type of like Jordan Belfort yacht that I always joke about on this podcast. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Goes by us. And I look on the back of it and it said The Limited on the back.
Well, you think it was less
no, I know it was because we saw it.
Wow.
It was on yeah. And I said to my parents, I said, me and that dude live in the same city and we are in the same place at the same time right now. And we could not be any more different in every regard of life.
Yeah.
It's like unbelievable. Like how we would like cross from the same city into on the other side of the world. And that guy was just sailing off. And that boat had to have been $10 million. Probably, maybe even more. Maybe $100 million. I don't even know. I've never shopped for a yacht.
Super yachts are very expensive.
Yeah. And I'll never forget that. And that's
you're like, hey, did you give him a little O and see if he would do an HIO?
I think he was probably busy doing whatever he was doing on the boat, and I'm assuming that whatever he was doing on the boat was more fun than what we were doing.
I think his tarp was on or off?
I think his tarp was off. I'm $600 million to build the super yacht, so I was pretty close with my $10 million estimation. And that's something that we have to keep in mind when we do the would you rather's of if I give you $500 million to do whatever, you can't buy a super yacht with it, then what the hell's the point?
Just a mere pittance. So, but yeah, it is amazing. But I do think people who are of that level of wealth, that's just not that's not the ego boost for them that it would be for someone like us.
It is funny to think about, though, that one crazy person with a lot of money could mess everything up for everyone. If they really wanted to.
Because the players would still have to be selected well and developed well. Because you could buy the top 25 players in the 24/7
0% chance if you were able to buy the top 25 players in the class every year and your recruiting class was 1 through 25 that you wouldn't win national championships.
If your coach sucked, it would.
No, I don't think there's a coach enough that would be
there's not a coach bad enough.
There isn't a coach bad enough that would be qualified for the job that couldn't win a national championship.
Georgia Southern era Brian Van Gorder could
now
lead.
Obviously it might not be the top 1 through 25 because you need to fill your position groups properly.
Right.
So like if 5 of the 25 players
but the
are
highest ranked at the position
of every position, and you got to self-select 25 players, there was I bet.
But it's not that
How
far
long
off from
would it
what
take?
Alabama did for a while, and they
Yeah, I
didn't
know.
win
It's
every
like,
year.
oh, by the way, that's exactly what the top 3 teams in America that keep winning national
Right.
titles are kind of doing right now.
Yeah.
They're doing it to a lesser extent. So if you even take that to like God mode, like how long do you think it would take?
Well, the thing is, somebody else would jump in. I guess.
Okay, so we're starting the Andy Staples A&T or whatever.
Okay.
Andy
Yes.
Staples A&M.
Okay.
And
I'm in
there's
ag
0
school.
players. You are in ag school, jorts and everything, right?
That's right.
Is that
Hey,
offensive?
Florida's
I don't
got a
know.
great ag school.
Yeah. You have 0 players on your roster right now,
Okay.
and you get to start by using the 247 Sports composite rankings this year to select 85 players to build your team however you want to build it. And then for the next 5 years, you can pick any of the top 25 players that you want to fill out your classes for the next 5 years. So 85 players that you are fielding on a team this year with a tough schedule are all 5-star freshmen. How many years would it take for you to win a national championship?
3.
How long do you think it would take for you to make the playoff?
2.
It's literally that simple.
But here,
and they would lose games this year because
what's interesting is you have described essentially this century in the Premier League, where various very deep pocketed owners have come in and take, but the same teams have not won because every time somebody does that and essentially buys a championship, somebody else comes in and buys better players.
I wish I could take this journey on with you. I don't know anything about soccer, but that sounds pretty annoying as a fan.
Well, but that's just how it works, but it does change up. And Leicester City, of course, is almost impossible to explain because it wasn't like a fluky one-off. Like they won the season, but no, Manchester City's won 4 of the last 5. Liverpool won the one they didn't win.
I feel like there's multiple championships every year, and it confuses me.
Well, yeah, because they have the Champions League, which if you finish, in the top part of the Premier League, then you go to the Champions League and play against the champions of the other European leagues.
What was the one last Sunday?
That was the Premier League. That was Man City. And Liverpool almost won.
Man City beat Liverpool.
Did not beat Liverpool, finished second. Man City wasn't playing Liverpool that day, but yes.
Yeah, who did I bet Liverpool and they lost.
Right. I forgot who they were playing that day.
Yeah, I can't remember either. But I just remember is this the Super Bowl or is it not the Super Bowl? I couldn't tell.
No, they do it. They play a full round robin. Everybody plays home and away. And the last day they all play at the same time, so people can't rig anything up. So they all start at the same time.
But this Sunday was the last game of whatever league they were playing.
That's right.
That was the championship game, and I don't know if that was the Super Bowl.
It wasn't a championship game. No, it wasn't like they play. It was the last day of the season. Oh, okay. No, I'm sorry. John Hayes, our producer, chimes in, who actually does follow us. He's talking the champ. I was talking about the end of the Premier League season, which was a couple weeks ago. This was Real Madrid versus Liverpool.
Real, and I watched that whole game, and I bet on Liverpool because a person told me to bet it, and it lost, and I was annoyed.
And I'm sorry to our soccer fans in the audience who've been
We're trying our best
at their phones for the last 2 minutes.
But John, if you could respond to us on Slack, is the Champions Final League final soccer's Super Bowl? Yes.
Okay. So there you go.
Because I feel like these teams now are going to split up, and some players are going to go in one direction and they're going to play in another, and in 3 months they're going to be playing in another league or something. It's hard for me to follow.
Well, they right, and their league seasons will start over. Like La Liga's season will start, the Premier League will start, Serie A will start.
So the Real Madrid, who just won the Champions League final, isn't a team year round?
They are. They play in La Liga. They play in the Spanish league.
Oh, okay. I thought that their players split up and go in different directions.
Well,
and play on different teams and stuff.
Well, this year, because it's a World Cup year, the players will be splitting up and going to their various national teams and playing for their countries.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I just always feel like there's soccer on, and I don't know what the stakes are, and that's why I get frustrated.
Yeah. that part, I'm learning more about that. But
Are you into
it's
it? Are you into it? Like, do you
no,
watch it?
I like the soap opera of it, and I like some of the economics of it because they're so close to college football. And I learned this by reading The Club. Somebody had called me and said, this is after Texas and Oklahoma, the news broke that they were going to the SEC. Somebody called me and said, you need to read this book called The Club. It's a book that Greg Sankey read right after it came out, and he loved it. And it's about the history of the Premier League and how it formed. And basically, English soccer was a very mom and pop regional operation, much like college football was in the 80s. And when the top teams realized they could break away and keep most of the money came gushing in. And this is also at the same time that media rights deals blew up and live sports value blew up.
Do you think Greg Sankey was reading this on a gold toilet?
He might have been. Greg Sankey doesn't strike me as a gold toilet kind of guy. I think his fixtures are fairly pedestrian. But I do think he read it with great interest because he probably saw a lot of parallels between that and college football.
Yeah.
And so it's the same deal. There are some rules in terms of how you can sign players and what you can sign them to, but it feels like the rules don't always get followed, or some contracts that you think would violate the rules don't. So it's much more similar to college football than it is to, say, the NFL, which has a very hard salary cap, or the NBA, which has salary cap slots where you can basically say, this guy has played this many years, he had made this many all-NBA teams, he's therefore eligible to make this much money. Like, you can't say that.
And I don't want to get into like the dog days of like cliche summer college football discussion, because I think we're actually interesting about topics that are happening.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that the general way that relegation works is fascinating to me.
It is. And it would never happen in America because it didn't already exist. It's sort of like I always say the draft would never be instituted now, like the NBA or NFL draft would never be instituted now if it didn't already exist. Relegation, same thing. Relegation had been part of English soccer, so it stayed part of English soccer when the Premier League broke away. And it was kind of an olive branch to the lower divisions. Hey, you can play your way into this. And obviously in college football, it would be a lot of fun, and they'll never do it.
I just want to watch a game where the team that loses is out of the league.
Yes, the team that loses is
Can you imagine the stakes? How compelling that would be?
Right. The team that loses, like the team that finishes at the bottom of the SEC has to go to the Sun Belt, and the Sun Belt champ goes to the SEC. The team that finishes at the bottom of the Big Ten has to go to the MAC, and the MAC champ goes to the Big Ten. Like, it actually would work because you have 5 Group of 5 leagues and 5 Power 5 leagues.
And that would like also solve the playoff discussion, because if a team is really, really good and they win their league and they don't make the college football playoff because there's only 4 teams, then you can say, you know what? Next year you're in the big boy league. This won't be a problem for you. Do it again and you'll make the playoff.
Right. But just the same problem as relegation. If you get relegated out of the Premier League, all of a sudden you got a lot less money to work with because you're not sharing that Premier League pot of TV money.
Yeah. I wish that we could figure out a way to do this. It would be funny.
It would be so much fun. And
who is better at football, Vanderbilt or the Sun Belt champ?
The Sun Belt champ lately, like Louisiana Lafayette was a better team than Vanderbilt last year.
Yeah.
I mean, and the Sun Belt's only getting better. Like that's another story for another day. Like, we need to get Vanini on and talk about that. How the Sun Belt went from 10 of 10 to basically like 7 of 10 now. Maybe 8, but we'll see where the Mountain West sort of stacks up. But yeah,
what
the
percentage of the Power 5? And I'm so sorry, and I hope you love this about me, but I just want to ask interesting questions that have nothing to do with what we're talking about. What percentage of the Power 5 do you think is interchangeable with the Group of 5?
33 and a third. I'd say a third of the Power 5.
Like that you could switch and it would be the same exact results.
If you switched with the best of the Group of 5.
So if you took the best of the Group of 5 and you took out the worst of the Power 5 and switched them, then it would be the same.
I think it would, and I think certain Group of 5 programs that are run very well, that have smart administrations, would then become good Power 5 programs. Like I'm very interested to see what happens to Houston and what happens to Cincinnati and what happens to UCF, which have been very well run group of 5 programs through the years.
But Cincinnati was legitimately a top 10 football team in the country last year.
So now give them more resources, which they will get in the Big 12. Now, they may not get the level of resources that the current Big 12 schools get with Oklahoma and Texas in the league, but they could get fairly close to it, and it'll be more than they have now. My guess is Cincinnati gets better as a football program.
Yeah.
Because that's one of those, I always talk about how Ohio State is always good. Oklahoma, other than that one little stretch of the 90s, always good. Cincinnati, for the most part, has been good this century. Whether it's D'Antonio, Brian Kelly, Butch Jones, Tommy Tuberville was the only coach who wasn't extraordinarily successful there.
Well, he was too busy worrying about running for public office when he was
exactly. Yeah. Although he did have Desmond Ridder committed to that staff. That's the crazy part. That's how old Desmond Ridder is. But then Luke Fickell comes in. So they're 4 for 5 essentially this century on coaching hires.
Well, there's certain programs in college football, both in the Group of 5 and in the Power 5, that have this like bulletproof mentality or this bulletproof resume of it doesn't matter who the head coach is, they're going to be good. Yeah. I think Baylor's kind of one of those.
Without a doubt.
Houston's one of those.
I would agree with that too.
And there's certain
Houston fired Tony Levine after he won 8 games.
And like my buddy Bill Landis said this to me once, but he said he would be wary of hiring a coach from one of those programs because he doesn't. It's kind of hard to tell how much is the coach and how much is the infrastructure.
Well, it worked out for Notre Dame, and it didn't work out for Tennessee.
I wonder if anybody would have pause hiring Luke Fickell as a result of that.
I don't think they should, because the difference.
Not that I think they should. Right. Don't take
the difference between Fickell and Butch Jones and Brian Kelly. Butch Jones and Brian Kelly both succeeded coaches who were very successful at Cincinnati. Luke Fickell had to rebuild it.
Yeah. And basically is national championship for that program, what they did this year. They should hire. They should hang a banner for that. Yeah.
When you think about where they were when he got there, and he's winning with the players that he got before they started winning and started recruiting at a little bit higher level. That's who the older players were on that team. It's very impressive. It is very impressive. Before we go though, Ari, I need to check and make sure I'm not crazy, because
I'm a little nervous that I'm not going to know what you're talking about.
You will know. You will know. This is very self-explanatory, but I had the Jacobin Mugatu, I feel like I'm taking crazy pills moment this week. Well, actually for the entirety of the SEC meetings, because went in there and the vibe was they're going to vote on a scheduling format, and it's probably going to be they're going to expand to 9 conference games, 3 permanent opponents, and then 6 that rotate through twice every 4 years. The other option was they stay at 8 conference games, 1 permanent opponent, and then 7 that rotate through twice every 4 years. One of those is incredibly stupid, and one of those is great. There is no debate between the two of them in my mind. I cannot imagine why anybody in their right mind would even support one over the other. And
are you going to ask me which one's stupid?
Well, I feel like I should, because I want to know if this is just me being in my bubble. Am I being, do I have blinders on, or am I?
I think one
is
stupid.
Sense?
I think 3 permanent opponents is better.
Thank you. Good. Okay. Yeah. Glad. Okay. Just wanted to make sure.
Especially considering the fact that most of these conferences have 3. If you want the Big Ten, you want Ohio State to play Penn State and Michigan every year.
I wrote a column and I said, because you think about this, if you do it this way, you don't have Georgia and Auburn playing every year, and even worse, you don't have Texas and Texas A&M playing every year, because
it also seems counterproductive for your television revenue.
Exactly. So it would be the equivalent of the Big Ten going, well, we have Michigan playing Ohio State. We really don't need Michigan and Michigan State to play every year.
And we don't need Ohio State and Michigan State and Ohio State and Penn State and every other game. Now, the only thing that I don't know is if Ohio State plays Illinois instead of Michigan State one year.
The Illinois
Does
Trophy?
the Illabuck.
Or Illinois, yeah.
Yeah.
Illinois,
You don't have, but like, does the Illinois game and the Michigan State game even out to something similar?
Well, but that's
I don't know, but like
the Big Ten's going to probably do something like this too. It's a 14-team league, so I think I did this exercise in a column a few months ago. I'm trying to remember the math on how you make that rotate evenly. You might need, I think you need 2 permanent opponents so that you get your rotation to work. So yeah, if you had 2 permanent opponents in a 9-game conference schedule, that would be 7. No, you need to get 6. So you'd need 3 permanent opponents in a 9-game conference schedule. Because you'd have. So
are we doing math here? Is that what we're doing?
We're not good at it.
Because I think you lost me there halfway through. I was hoping that you were
no.
Okay.
Actually, with a 14-team league, you would need to do 3 permanent opponents with an 8-game conference schedule.
That's right.
To make that rotate evenly.
Yeah.
So,
and like the thing about it is, like, forget the television contracts. I don't think anybody who is a fan cares about that. That's for them to mull over and to debate over. We want to watch the good games. Like, why would you possibly take away the good games from us?
With the SEC one, that means you're giving those schools freedom to schedule somebody else, and they're probably going to schedule somebody bad, probably,
because you have to have some modicum of control, and 3 gives you some control.
Yeah, but just adding the other conference game, adding that 9th conference game, that just means there's more of Oklahoma, Tennessee, Texas, Tennessee, Texas, Alabama, Oklahoma, Alabama, LSU and Tennessee, LSU and Georgia. All of these are games that sound pretty great. Like Auburn, Florida sounds pretty awesome. You just get more of these, even if they're not the permanent ones. But you absolutely want to have Texas and A&M play every year. You want Texas and Oklahoma to play every year. The third one I'd give to Texas is Arkansas, because Arkansas people hate Texas more than anything else in the world. And that would be a fun rivalry. That would be fun every year to have that. I want Texas A&M to play Texas, and I want Texas A&M playing LSU every year, because that would be fun.
Yes, I think that this is obvious.
Yeah, and I think that what they've said now, you're going to hear this on Friday morning. We will see what happens with the SEC meetings. The presidents are still there as of Thursday night when we're recording this. They will meet on Friday throughout the early part of the day. And if there are any decisions to be made or voted on, they will do that. But the vibe I got when I left the lovely Hilton Sandestin on Thursday afternoon was that there probably wasn't going to be a vote, because they wanted to kick the can down the road a little bit longer. And I took that to mean they would like to go to the schools that are resisting and want the 8-game schedule to tell them, no, this is not what we're going to do. So rather than you going home mad, we're just going to put this off for a little bit, and then we're going to do it because it's the smart thing to do, and it's what ESPN wants.
If the day that you left, Stuart R. Bell and Catherine Banks, the presidents of Texas A&M and Alabama, started screaming at each other?
It would be amazing.
But you were there, and
Seth Emerson's still there. We'd have it covered like a freaking blanket. So
I was looking up like the president's names, because I don't know. You always know all this stuff, and like it makes me feel bad, because like I don't know all this stuff off the top of my head. Like, did you know their names?
I knew Stuart Bell. Catherine I met a few weeks ago, and I knew she was new, but I would not have been able to just pull her name immediately. They had Michael Young before her, so I had. But and then remember,
the fact that you know university presidents' names like blows my mind.
Part of the job.
No, I know. So I'm bad at it. Is that what you're saying?
Well, no, you're new at it.
Yeah,
I didn't when I first started covering the national beat in 2008. I didn't know all, but I only knew like a couple SEC presidents because I'd been covering Florida. But and in Texas A&M, remember, there's an on-campus president, and then there's a system chancellor, and the system chancellor is the person who's the more powerful one. That guy's name is John Sharp. He is you don't mess with him. He's the one. He was. I forget. I think he was raising emus or maybe alpacas or something like that, and they kept getting eaten by coyotes. And so Texas Monthly had asked him, what are you still into that? And he goes, nah, I'm long on Coyotes now. So like that's just who he is. Like,
yeah,
he was born to be
that's
the
a
guy in
story.
charge of Texas A&M, essentially.
Yes, it seems like he fits in perfectly there.
But yeah, so that's I don't think at that level they do that much screaming at one another. Now there's a few, like Bernie Mattson, who used to be the president of Florida, would say exactly what was on his mind at all times. It was great because he was not worried about, oh, what's the commissioner going to say, because his thing was the commissioner works for me, and so I'm going to say what I want, and you're going to deal with that. It was not like that. Now you had Mark Keenum, the Mississippi State president, who also is the chair of the College Football Playoff Board of Managers. He did say on Thursday that they are hoping to have a CFP plan finalized by this time next year. They're going to start talking about it again in August. So we'll see. And I do think a little bit of the hesitance with the SEC is, what if something crazy happens and the playoff stays at 4? Do they want to keep the conference schedule at 8? I personally don't think keeping it at 8, or I'm sorry, I personally don't think moving it to 9 would really harm their chances of winning a national title in the 14 playoff if it stayed at 4, which I don't think it will.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
So we'll see. I mean, I love good games, and like I get irrationally excited thinking about some of the matchups that would happen in a 9-game SEC schedule with that 16-team lineup. It just seems like a no-brainer. These are games that a television executive would just salivate over. Like, well, Alabama, Texas this year. Like, Fox immediately snapped it up for Big Noon Sunday. Like that's our Big Noon Saturday. And because that's their first chance to get Alabama on their air in a long, long time. So like ESPN now is going to have an Alabama Texas game twice every 4 years. It's
gold mine.
It's crazy. But you also still have the Alabama Tennessee game, which a lot of people still care about, even though it's been a very lopsided rivalry. So
yeah,
good. I'm glad I'm not crazy. That's I was thinking, I just kept going back and like, why does this feel like such a no-brainer? And why is there anybody in? And look, the reason some of the schools are against it is they want to be able to schedule their way to a bowl game. Mm-hmm. But there's two factors to this. One, they're the schools. They make the rules. They could just change the standard for bowl eligibility, which wouldn't be a problem. The other thing is, if they expand the playoff, which they probably are, and depending on where, if the bowls are even used in the playoff, it's still taking people out of the top tier bowls.
Yeah.
So, and different top tier bowls, you're probably going to need more bowl participants anyway. So probably going to have to change that number to 5 anyway, if you want to fill the ones that currently exist.
That's true. That's complicated.
It's not really, though.
It's just a lot of numbers.
Yeah. The key number there is 5 or 6. Like, do you care? Do you care if a 5-win team plays in a bowl game? I don't. Like, you could make the argument that bowl games were rewards for a special season back when there were 8 bowl games and you had to win like 8 games to even have a chance at getting in one.
Yeah, now everybody gets the reward. The reward. The bowl season is a reward for the viewer.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, it is loser thinking if you are an SEC school who wants to play 8 conference games because you're worried you might not be mediocre enough to make the Beef O'Brady's Bowl, which I know doesn't exist anymore, but for example.
I've never been to the Beef O'Brady's.
You're not missing much.
I hear about it a lot, though.
So when I covered high schools in Pasco County, Florida, that's where everybody went after the games. Like, if you needed I interviewed multiple coaches in multiple sports where they'd be like, no, we'll do the interview at Beefs, because that's where they were going.
Beefs is what they call it.
Beefs.
It was just like a kind of like Chili's, kind of.
It's a sports bar. It's like the most average sports bar in the world. They got beer on tap. They got wings that are okay.
I feel like I've been there already. Yeah.
You have.
Yeah.
Even if you haven't been to one of them.
This one, you've been to one.
Been to one.
Yeah. Yes. Andy, I think this is a good time to do a little bit of a victory lap and just say we just went an hour and we talked about football the whole time. So all of you
Well,
off
we talked
topic.
about NIL
No,
and
but
Cheddar Bay biscuits.
we talked about college football and issues pertaining to college football the entire time. There were a few 30-second veers about Cheddar Bay biscuits and food, but that was a college football podcast that time.
Hooray for us. Although I've noticed that our most devoted listeners actually get mad when we don't talk about food. So we
we'll
got
even
to
the scales next time, guys.
Yeah, we got to serve everybody, and we understand that. Listen, we're not Burger King. Everybody's not going to have it their way. So we'll keep trying to do the best show we can. You guys keep giving us those 5-star reviews. Drop a question in your 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, and it will go to the front of the line on the next Dear Andy, Dear Ari episode. And we may just sort of sprinkle them in episodes that aren't Dear Andy, Dear Ari episodes, because if we get enough of these, we're gonna need to get them on the air. Because
I'm with you on that.
We are going to put your question on the air, no matter how dumb it is, if you give us a 5-star review, because we are all about gaming that system.
That's right.
It has been a pleasure, Ari. Fun week. I cannot wait to see what next week brings, because this has been the most interesting offseason in the history of college football, and I think it probably will just keep going until it's the season again.
That's right.
We'll talk to you on Monday.